Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman&B Challenger from the Future. In the last part we finished off the base campaign, and now it's time to start a new game up once again to play ourselves as the good old blue bomber in grayscale once again. First time we've done this, I think, since I did Mega Man World 5 on the Game Boy. Mega Man, by and large, plays the same as he does in all the other games, similar to how Base plays exactly like he did in M-Base. You got the charge shot, you can shoot while moving, you can slide, all that kind of jazz. You even got some, more traditional power-ups in the shop this time for him compared to the original Mega Man and Base. With that said, we're still going to be going through the same 8 stages that we did as Base, albeit, slightly abridged, I guess. I technically think I get through them faster than we tended to as Base, from memory. His slide is slightly lower in its sprite height than Base's dash, so there are some spikes you can get under that you couldn't as Base, but by and large, the game's gonna be the same thing. In some regards, I maybe should have waited to replenish myself between playthroughs, just to give it a little break and find new things to talk about potentially, but I don't want to have a 6-year gap between the next time I have to talk about this game, so let's just get it all out of the way now, you know? Now, if memory serves, we get more of a chance to see this potentially in the Mega Man run, but something that's kind of weird about this game, on top of all the other things that's kind of weird about this game. The life counter is there beneath our HP bar on the left side of the screen, but this, I think, is the only Mega Man game that maxes the life count out at 8 for some reason, instead of 9? I don't know why they changed that. I doubt it was an integer problem, because I think the Wonder Swan could handle those just fine if the Final Fantasy ports were as good as the Game Boy Advanced versions were, at least. So, And also, a detail I actually didn't talk about much in the base playthrough. Keep an eye out on the stage select for the boss portrait on the bottom left before and after you beat the boss fight, because when you beat them, they actually have like a little cute, funny, defeated sprite for the boss's portrait. I'm kind of surprised how few games do that otherwise. Like, usually in a Mega Man game, whenever you beat a boss in the level select, the portrait just straight up vanishes. Or in some cases even just gets damaged. This is the only one that actively does something that's that fun with it, and I kind of wish they did that more often. Whoops! Not often, I just do a straight up pratfall during an intro stage in one of these games, but whoops. So now we're already on to the Grey Devil. This stage noticeably does feel shorter as Mega Man, but that's partially because on this run we also don't have to watch the intro cutscene that we did last time. And the Grey Devil is where we can really see immediately just the power that Base lacks against boss fights, because by and large, Mega Man's charge shot does a universal 4 damage to bosses, which in a game where bosses don't have invincibility frames, kind of builds up over time, even in the mini-bosses. It's really good. Boss, otherwise its pattern's unchanged. Kind of points its face forward here and there, that's the only time you can attack it. And while it's doing that, it fires 3 globules of gel to the ground, which do technically harm you as you're trying to escape from them, but the main reason that is to try to make you take 2 hits, both from it and the Grey Devil trying to move into you when it moves across the screen. This is all this fight does. If you remember from the base playthrough, basically none of the bosses in this game have more than 3 attacks. The final boss is the only real exception to that rule, and even then, that's arguably still only 3 attacks, just that the attacks do multiple things, technically. Alright, intro stage is done with. I expected Grey Devil to fall to you. I'll need a new base, though. Why do you look like me? Hey! You don't have to keep doing this! But I do. Stop my soldiers, and I'll tell you who I really am. And then he just mysteriously gets away. This game's cutscenes, can you tell if they're kind of stilted? Considering all, 4 of them are just Mega Man and or Base standing on the left side while a character talks to them. No, at them, not even directly to them, on the opposite side of the screen. Alright though, we're by and large following the same boss order we did as Base, so we're starting off with good old Airconman and his weird vertical stage, so it's time to do that rotation thing with the screen again. Whee! While we're adventuring through this stage though, let's talk about the shop again. In particular, let's talk about Mega Man's exclusive items, since we already went over the common items and Base's items during that run. Mega Man gets 4 items exclusive to him, and they're all some pretty familiar faces. Starting off, there's the Rush Coil in place of the Gospel Boost for base, which is the usual. For 100 screws, Rush will pop on down in front of you and can be used as a spring. You might want to pick this up because there's some jumps that base can make no problem that Mega Man needs to make still, that are pretty tight without the double jump around. But you can still technically beat the game without it. There's Tango, where Tango appears and then rolls into enemies to attack them, just like it does in, I think that was Mega Man 5 on the Game Boy? Yeah, Mega Man World 5. Beat gets another item again, which makes Beat appear and make Mega Man completely invincible for a short while. And Beat will fly around Mega Man during that period, damaging enemies he touches. He essentially acts as a shield item. For 300 bolts, though, so not really worth it. And then there's good old Eddie, who appears and then drops a singular item, as became the thing he did once he became an item you had to buy in the few games. That's the active way he works. Base definitely gets better exclusive items, if only because he needs some of those items to be very competent in battle, like the Buster upgrade. But Mega Man's, particularly Rush Coil, are good. If anything, I can give him this. His items are... Actually, no, his items are... No, they're generally cheaper than Base's. Because Base's exclusive items are worth 200, 300, 300, and 150. Whereas Mega Man's are 100, 200, 300, and 150. So I guess Mega Man, in some regards, is just the easy mode overall. I still think they overpriced a lot of items in the shop in both games, though. Because 300 bolts for the most expensive items, period, in both games, if memory serves, is just way too much. I think even some of the ones in base get to be 350. Yeah, not a fan. Just like I'm not a fan of this mini-boss is Mega Man, because, while yes, the charge shot does 4 damage, having to use the Metar helmets to reflect your shots just doesn't feel good, especially with how fast the Metars attack in this one. Not great, not great. Although, actually, now I'm thinking about it, I'm a little curious. Like, I've said that the Mega Man playthrough is going to be shorter, and it's going to be reflected that way in the parts, even. But now I'm curious. I'm going to look at, like, speedrun.com, see if they have times for this game. Just to see if there's even, like, if it even reflects at that level. It probably does, just because Base's Buster is, again, worthless. Would it be under Rockman and Forte? Yeah, there it is. Alright. World record for Mega Man in this game is 22 minutes and 55 seconds from 2 years ago by Clear Tonic, one of the 2 runs, by the way. And, Base's world record is by Master Cactar at 32 minutes and 33 seconds. Yeah, about a 10-minute difference overall, damn. So what I'm hearing is... second place as him is open. Not worth it. Not worth having to play through this game again. Although all these records were set within the last 5 years. All 3 of them, total. Although wait, actually, our emulator runs allowed. Let's check the rules for these. Timer starts when you hit new game. Timer ends when Megaman-Shadow blows up. Translation patches allowed as it doesn't impact gameplay in any way. Ooh, emulators are doable on it. Ooh, tempting. Mega Man overall has a harder time in this stage than Base does, because hitting the jellyfish in this part of the stage, I guess they're more of a squid actually now I look at them more, to actively inflate them and use them as the balloons. Your charge shot can hit them, but you run the risk of accidentally popping them at the same time. You have to kind of take advantage of how they kind of bob up and down in their animations to be able to hit them at all here, whereas Base can just walk up to them and aim slightly downwards. In some ways, looking back, I think playing through the stages as multiple characters in the X series overall feels better than it does in Classic. Partially just because I think the X series does a better job of making its characters feel more distinct and like they're their own characters rather than Classic overall. Because you could make the argument that all 3 of the major playable characters in Classic feel like Mega Man, but X, whereas X is the variable you fill in this case. Whereas, like, Proto Man is Mega Man, but with less defense and a shield. Base is Mega Man, but he has a double jump and can aim in multiple directions. Zero feels completely different from X, feels completely different from Axel, at least in X8 more so than in X7. In that regard, I guess that's probably why X and Zero were playable in more games than Base and X were, or Base and Classic Mega Man were overall. Because, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and yeah, that's 5 versus Mega Man and Bases, and Base, Challenger from the Future, 10, 3. Either way, now we're on to Airconman. His pattern's unchanged, but as Mega Man, we actively have to take advantage of his attacks to actively damage him now. In particular, during the latter half of his pattern, when he gets up to the center of the screen, you now need to use his clouds as platforms to jump up and hit him, but you need to be careful you don't just bonk your head into more of the clouds when you do so. Your charge shot does good enough damage, but you can also just make sure to spam fire into him between shots. In fact, in some regards, that might be faster. You really could choose any of the 4 Robot Masters in this one for your first one. The main reason I go for Airconman as both characters is that his weapon is just that good for both of them. It's overall the same weapon, barring a name change if memory serves, but it's just that worth it, I find it, honestly. Going back to the multiple playable characters thing, I guess, though, I guess the main difference as well is how they handle it overall in the series, like in the X series overall. Playing as X-Zero and Axel when he's there isn't a multiple playthroughs thing. It's usually a one playthrough, you can just swap characters whenever kind of deal, barring certain ending criteria being fulfilled or otherwise. It's really only X4 that X and Zero are completely different runs on top of technically the first bit of Mega Man Extreme 2 before you unlock Extreme Mode. It's the classic series, like, the characters are their own full campaigns, so that just means playing through the game multiple times. In that regard, I guess it's maybe why I sometimes run out of things to bring up about stages with games like this, because we've seen them before. For now, though, with Airconman out of the way, it's time for us to head for Bulletman once again. The barrier wind we got from Airconman, by the way, is the exact same as the base Cyclone, Forte Cyclone, whichever name you prefer, just that it's a name change. Which is actually kind of a rarity in some regards, because some of the weapons Mega Man and Base get in this game are slightly different from each other in how they work. Slightly, not a lot, but enough that it's notable. So how are y'all doing? I'm doing good, playing through Xeno 3 on stream recently, working on my own time to get the Trails Platinums out of the way, because I finished that Death March of Cold Steel, no, not even Cold Steel, Azure through Cold Steel 4, and prep for Reverie to release in about just under 2 months' time. No, actually, just under a month and a half now I look at it. Ooh! I gotta finish Xeno 3, and then finish Final Fantasy 16 when that releases, probably right after I finish, right before I finish. Too many games, too many big RPGs, and I'm into all of them. It's interesting how just the ability to mash can make Mega Man feel better to play than Base in this game. Because you can really just mash the shit out of the fire button and just drain through enemies' health much faster than Base could ever hope to because of his set rate of fire. Because usually, like, Mega Man games, you can only have 3 shots on screen at a time. And while I think that's by and large the case here, if you just go right in an enemy's face, it's not gonna matter. In fact, I remember being very impressed with one thing I think the GameCube Legacy Collection did right. I think the PS2 version had this as well. It had just a straight up auto-fire button, and that was great. Because if you just got right up in an enemy's face, you wouldn't have to worry about hurting your fingers trying to get stuff. This jump can be a little perilous as Mega Man, because otherwise you're going to fall towards that bottomless pit. You're not probably going to fall into it, but it's high enough chance that it's scary. I think the hardest jumps for Mega Man in specific are usually towards the last 3 stages, though, which I guess you could call the castle for the game. The Clockman into Compass Man into Megaman-Shadow. Overall, it's not too bad. Mega Man actively has an easier time in this stage, though, than Base, because he has a better chance of avoiding these falling girders, because the dash is, the slide is just such a lower sprite than the dash. It gives you more of a chance to get out of the way. And that's sort of a consistent thing throughout the series now I think about it, because, like, obviously we saw a little bit of using the slide to have your sprite be lower to avoid hazards more easily in Mega Man Unlimited. But that's always just kind of been a thing. I don't really take advantage of it too much in the mainline games, because, well, it doesn't feel as needed in a lot of cases. Like, the most you would want the slide for, barring just moving faster in some cases, is, racing ahead faster than, say, like a force beam sort of situation where if you don't get through a section fast enough, instant kill hazards get a lot more dangerous all of a sudden. With that said, it's once again time for Bulletman, Non-canon, whichever you prefer. Once again, weak to Airconman's weapon. He, once again, will just charge left and right after a jump, which can cause a shockwave effect, allowing you to be shaken up for a second. And he fires up 3 mortars in the air that land and cause a small explosion. Not a lot to write home about. What is a little bit to write home about is his weapon this time around. As base, we got the base Vulcan, which homed in on enemies. As Mega Man, we're gonna get, I think the Japanese name for it is the Rockin' Vulcan. I think they just call it the Mega Vulcan here, maybe. Yeah. This one, instead, fires 3 shots at once. The first shot will always aim straight forward, but the other 2 shots that break off of it will go diagonally up and down and can even slightly home in on enemies if memory serves. A cool weapon, just not very useful. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're gonna go take care of most of the rest of the Mega Man run. I think we only just don't take care of maybe Compass Man and Rockman-Shadow's own stages. See you guys then.